I can feel the blood creeping up from the heathens. Got will, got fight, got pride, got reason. If they wanna go eat, then you know I'm gon' feed them. If you're coming for me, hope you're ready for a demon. I got eyes in the back of my head, I'm seeing. Take me for granted and you know I'm leaving. I'ma take what's mine with the webs I'm weaving. I could take this crowd from seeing to believing. Got a taste for blood and my tongue keeps bleeding from the words I spit. So sharp, so freezing, so cold. Behold, frostbite they feeling. I could take.
Hello, beauties. Happy True Crime Thursday. Obviously, this is not going to be very, very long because I just really have been wanting to talk about this series that's been on Netflix, and I want to see what you guys think about it. I'm going to go over a couple of things with you, but it's more about the series. More or less getting into the mind of Jeffrey Dahmer. I hope you guys had an amazing day or having an amazing day wherever you are. Thank you to everybody who showed up. I have missed you guys very, very much. Sometimes you just need a break from the internet. And I have said that to you guys many a times. Take a break if it starts getting too much for you. You know, people are toxic here on the internet. You see a lot of bad things here on the internet, and there's nothing wrong with just taking a step away, especially if you're a creator. But subscribers, they have to see it too. You know, it's hard. It's difficult when you start to, build a relationship and getting to know a creator that you're supporting, and then you listen to them being bashed or being talked about or being lied on, and you know that this is happening. And it can definitely affect you. So it can affect creators just as much as supporters, or you may like both people that are going back and forth. So that's why I say that there's nothing wrong with just taking a step away just for a day or two, just to collect your thoughts, rejuvenate, and then come back better than ever, right? Hey, Manny behind the mic. Hey, Heather. Hey, Brandy CMUA. Hey, Sparkle. How you doing, beautiful? I hate peas. How are you? It's good to see you. Heather, Megan, Aesop's Inspiration, Kelly R, Care Bear, Nikki, Victoria, Felony Melanie, 420, Tinkerbell's mom, Victoria, Care Bear. Hey, Kisme, how are you, beautiful? Stranger Clegan, so good to see you. Bella and Punky's mom. Commander, how are you? So definitely trigger warning for this. Hey, Mama. Wait a minute. Hey, Mama of 3. Wow, it's good to see you guys all here. Is it Fatima? Fatima? I just want to say that you're doing a great job, Teaya. I love your videos. I haven't watched a single Megamouth video since starting to watch you. You reminded me that I don't need that stuff. Well, that's amazing in my life. Thank you so much for telling me that. More or less, it's not about going back and forth with her anymore, you guys. I think I don't need to do that anymore. When you cross a line of showing nude photos on your channel, at that point, I don't know what else needs to be said. More or less, it's just about calling her out on her toxic behavior. That's what we do here on this channel. We do commentary on problematic creators. It is what it is. And she's definitely problematic. So it's not about a tit for tat or anything like that. At this point, I've proven my point of what a huge liar she is. I think now it's just talking about how horrible she is, bringing attention to that. How about that? Welcome to the Glam Fam, Bella and Punky's mom. How are you? Welcome. Thank you so much for becoming a member. I appreciate you. Okay, so that's what it's going to be about now. Just calling her out, and we will continue that tomorrow. I have something planned for us tomorrow and taking it back. I will say you are the better person, and I can deal with conflict a lot more mature than MM can, right, Jovi? And you've definitely been the one who has warned me before anybody else, to be honest with you. But save all of that stuff for tomorrow. We're going to talk about Jeffrey Dahmer today and this documentary. I have a lot to say about this documentary because I feel like it's important to call out a lot of the deflection and a lot of not only just Jeffrey Dahmer being mentally ill, but the people around him were mentally ill also, in my opinion, and not just his mother. Okay, his dad, his stepmom, everyone, his grandma, everyone around Jeffrey Dahmer. And if you hear me say Jeffree Star, I apologize. And the reason why, you guys, is because I don't know if you guys know, but here's a fun fact. Jeffree Star, the makeup artist, he made a song about Jeffrey Dahmer. It is a song about glamorizing Jeffrey Dahmer. So if you hear me say Jeffree Star, I apologize. You can correct me in the comments. It's not purposely. It's just that because he made a song about Jeffrey Dahmer, it just makes me think of him every time I see. I don't know why, but I think everyone that was surrounded around Jeffrey Dahmer were mentally ill, not just him. So I am going to just kind of go over with you guys like the history of Jeffrey Dahmer a little bit, and then we will talk about the series. And I watched the whole entire series. If you watch the whole entire series, that's awesome. Yes, glamorizing him. Kids may like literally saying that I want to meet somebody, and like the lyrics to his song was, I want to meet somebody and tear off their skin like Jeffrey Dahmer. And that's another thing we're going to talk about, you guys. Like, we're going to talk about how he's being glamorized right now, in my opinion. There's a lot of things about Jeffrey Dahmer and his situation that's being very much glamorized as if it almost people feeling empathetic for him. And it's like, no, you can't. There's no empathy for this man, period. He's a monster. Okay, I cannot find any type of empathy for somebody like that, but there's reasons why there's empathy for him. Hey Dave, it's good to see you. Okay, so let me pull this up really quick, and then I'm going to just go. It's crazy how many people are fans of his. He has had a huge following of female fans for years, even after his death. Absolutely. It is so strange. It is, Heather. It's very, very strange. Very strange. Glamorizing him is just ridiculous. Stella B says, I had to stop watching it. Only got to the first guy he took home. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on it. Thank you, Stella. I'm interested to hear you guys' thoughts on it. That's why I want to talk about it. And I think the most and the biggest question, and don't answer it now, towards the end, but was this even necessary? And I'm going to tell you guys my fear of this. If you get deep into thoughts, and if you get deep into your thoughts and you are a conspiracy theorist like myself, some people are, some people aren't, and that's okay. But I'm the type of person that I believe in predictive programming, all of that type of stuff. And I just feel like in a lot of ways, this was a bad idea on Netflix. But in a lot of ways, I like the things that they showed and how there's a lot of things that they left out too. So hold on one second. Let me pull this up. Okay, let me pull up a picture. Not that we really need to see him, but I think it's necessary if we're going to be talking about him. Okay. So I am going to just tell you guys a little bit about his history. Some of this I took notes, and then some of it is just from Wikipedia. So Jeffrey Dahmer, he was born May 21st, 1960. He was born a day before me, except for I was born in 1981 or 82. So he's a Gemini. Lord help me. Geminis. Them Geminis, man. Just joking. We're not bad. Okay. Jeffrey Dahmer is from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, but he's actually originally from Ohio, and I am from Ohio too. Was born in Chicago, but lived in Ohio most of my life. He is the first two sons of Joyce Annette. Yes, the first two sons of Joyce Annette. And some sources report that Jeffrey Dahmer was deprived of attention as an infant, which it very much shows that in the series. And we are going to hold on, I have to turn this phone down real quick, you guys. Hold on. Because of my music on here, I don't want to get demonetized. Okay. So, like I said, supposedly he was deprived, from attention as an infant. And then other sources, however, suggest that Dahmer was generally doted as an infant and toddler by both parents, although his mother was known to be tense, greedy for both attention and pity, and argumentative with her husband, who is obviously Jeffrey Dahmer's father, and with their neighbors as well. So most serial killers are Gemini. Hey, not another housewife. Good to see you, sweetie. Look at how Manson was glamorized too. I'm very much a nature versus nurture, and the people in our lives versus behaviors. I agree. That's ridiculous. Glamorize the families left behind for the strength and the light of this. Not a killer. Geminis, yeah, we definitely have our good days and our bad days. Tupac was a Gemini. So that's to sum it up for you. Okay, so Dahmer had been very energetic and happy as a child, but became notably subdued after a double hernia surgery shortly before his 4th birthday. At elementary school, Dahmer was regarded as quiet and timid. One teacher later recollected she detected early signs of abandonment in Dahmer due to his father's absence and his mother's illnesses, the symptoms of which increased when she became pregnant with her second child. Nonetheless, in elementary school, Dahmer did have a small number of friends. In October 1966, the family moved to Dolestown, Ohio. So he wasn't actually originally from Ohio. He was born in Milwaukee. Duh. When Joyce gave birth in December, Jeffrey was allowed to choose the name of his new baby brother. He chose the name David. The same year, Lionel earned his degree and started work as an analytical chemist in nearby Akron, Ohio. From an early age, Dahmer manifested an interest in dead animals. His fascination with dead animals may have begun when he was at the age 4. He saw his father removing animal bones from beneath the family home. According to Lionel, Dahmer was oddly thrilled by the sound the bones made and became preoccupied with animal bones, which he initially called his fetal sticks. He occasionally searched beneath and around the family home for additional bones and explored the bodies of live animals to discover where their bones were located. In 1968, the family moved to Bath Township, Summit County, Ohio. This address was the third in 2 years and Dahmer's sixth address since marriage. The home stood in 1.5 acres of woodland with a small hut, only a short walk from the house where Dahmer began collecting large insects such as dragonflies and moths and skeletons of small animals such as chipmunks and squirrels. Some of these remains were preserved in jars and stowed away within the hut. And then 2 years later, during a chicken dinner, Dahmer asked Lionel what would happen if the chicken bones were placed in bleach. Lionel, pleased by what he believed to be his son's scientific curiosity, demonstrated how to safely bleach and preserve animal bones. Dahmer incorporated these preserving techniques into his bone collecting and also began collecting dead animals, including roadkill, which he would dissect and bury beside the hut, which, with the skulls occasionally placed atop makeshift crosses. According to one friend, Dahmer explained to him that he was curious as to animals, how animals fit together. In one instance in 1975, Dahmer decapitated the carcass of a dog before nailing the body to a tree and impaling the skull upon a stick in a woodland behind his house. As a prank, he later invited a friend to view the display, claiming he had discovered the remains by chance. The same year, Lionel taught his son how to preserve animal bones. Joyce began increasing her daily consumption of laxatives and sleeping pills, further minimizing her tangible contact with her husband and children. So I think, obviously, we know a lot of these things that Jeffrey Dahmer has done. I think one of the main things that should have obviously been concerning, and I understand that his father was like happy that he was interested, because I try to look at things from all angles. I try to think very critically, right? And from all angles, how I see it is that his dad was a scientist himself. He was an analytical scientist. So of course he would be happy that his son is interested in those things. But when it becomes it seemed as though it became more of an obsession to know how to decapitate animals and things like that. Like, that's why I say that the majority of the people around Jeffrey Dahmer, they enabled him, and I do feel that he was very, very much neglected, because that is concerning. That's concerning if someone is okay, you can be a little bit interested in something because, like father, like son. But when it comes to a point where it's so obsessive that you're doing pranks with it and you're so interested, that's not normal for someone of his age in adolescence. That's just not normal to me. And I don't think it would be normal to anybody else. And I think it stems from not only him, but a lot of psychologists, psychiatrists say that most serial killers end up when they're young, have tortured animals and things like that, because that's the closest thing to torturing a human, right? So let me read a little bit more. Hold on 1 second. Okay. So I'm going to read a little bit more here. So, hold on. It says from his freshman year at Revere High School, Dahmer was seen as an outcast. By the age of 14, he began drinking beer, hard alcohol in the daylight hours, frequently concealing his liquor inside his jacket he wore to school. He is known to have mentioned to one classmate who acquired why he was drinking scotch in the morning. History in the morning in history class, that the alcohol he consumed, he said it was his medicine. Although largely uncommunicative, in his freshman year, Dahmer was seen by staff as polite and highly intelligent, but with the average grades. So he had average grades, but they looked at him as highly intelligent. He he was a keen tennis player and played briefly in the high school band. When he reached puberty, Dahmer discovered he was gay. Okay, he did not tell his parents. In his early teens, he had a brief relationship with another teenage boy, although they had never had intercourse or anything like that. By Dahmer's later admission, he began fantasizing about dominating and controlling a completely submissive male partner in his early to mid-teens. And his, I'm not going to say that, fantasies gradually evolved to his focusing upon the chest and torso of the focus of his fantasies. The fantasies gradually became intertwined with dissection. When he was about 16, Dahmer conceived a fantasy of rendering unconscious a particular male jogger he found attractive, and then making use of his body. On one occasion, Dahmer concealed himself in the bushes with a baseball bat, which, if you watch the series, you've seen that part. He waited for this man. However, he did not pass by on that particular day. Dahmer later admitted this was his first attempt to attack and render an individual submissive to him. Among his peers, Dahmer became something of a class clown who often staged pranks, which became known as the doing a Dahmer. These included bleeding and stimulating. Sorry about that. These included bleeding and stimulating epileptic seizures or cerebral palsy at school, at a local stores. On occasion, Dahmer would perform these antics for money or to purchase alcohol. In 1977, Dahmer's grades had declined. His parents hired a private tutor with limited success. The same year, in an attempt to save their marriage, his parents attended counseling sessions. They continued to quarrel frequently. When Lionel discovered Joyce had engaged in a brief affair in September 1977, they both decided to divorce, telling their sons they wished to do so amicably. Lionel moved out of the house in the early 1978, temporarily residing in a motel on North Cleveland. And in 1978, Dahmer graduated from high school. A few weeks before his graduation, one of his teachers observed Dahmer sitting close to the school parking lot, drinking several cans of beer. When the teacher threatened to report the matter, Dahmer informed him he was experiencing a lot of problems at home and that the school's guidance counselor was aware of them. That spring, Joyce and David moved out of the family home to live with relatives in Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin. Dahmer had just turned 18 and remained in the family home. No, that wasn't in Wisconsin. That was in Chippewa Falls. He remained in the family home. Dahmer's parents divorced, and the divorce was finalized July 24th, 1978. Joyce was awarded custody of David and alimony payments. So the one thing that sticks out to me is that Dahmer was left in the home by himself, okay? Which is horrible. Even though he was graduating and things like that, that doesn't matter. He shouldn't have been left in a home by himself. His father wasn't around. It's obvious that not only was he he was neglected throughout his whole entire life. Even watching this series, it almost seemed as though he was avoided in a lot of ways. Like, they knew that a problem existed. They knew that there was something not right about their son, but they didn't acknowledge it. Okay. And obviously, when you're watching your parents growing up constantly arguing, it's obvious that his mother had mental illnesses. When you're watching something like that, that traumatizes you too as a child. Okay. People say this all the time, psychologists, whatever, that your child can feel when you as a parent are in distress. If you're miserable, your child feeds off of all of that. Okay. If you are not in a good place in your life as parents, your child feeds off of that. And I really truly feel like when you're in a toxic marriage like that, they did end up going to counseling one last try to work it out. But regardless, he should have been in counseling too. How many arguments has he probably witnessed from his mother and his father? And yet here he is, he's there alone. Now I can understand why people can empathize with him as a child, right? But in the same sense, empathizing with him now, not necessarily now, but just in this series in general, and saying, oh my gosh, he was just a lost soul, bullshit. I refuse to look at it in that way. This is a man who had no soul. Okay. He was evil to the core. And I think that there's a lot of reasons why people choose to continuously empathize for this man. But as a child, yes, absolutely. He should have been in counseling. He should have gotten all the help that he needed, because it was obvious that something wasn't right. Even from the moment that he had hernia surgery and they noticed that things were off about him then, why didn't you do something about it then? Why did you completely neglect that and pretend? It's just seems as though they were a family of pretending, and mostly pretending that things didn't exist. Because obviously at the end of the day, if you notice that there was problems when he had hernia surgery, why didn't you take him to counseling? Why didn't you seek some type of medical attention for him? I feel like Jeffrey Dahmer was doomed from the start. Like, he was definitely someone who didn't have a chance. I'm sorry, that's just how I feel. So I'm going to read the rest of this. It's pretty much almost over. I just want to give you guys kind of like a summary. Like I said, some of it's notes and then some of it is from Wikipedia. You guys can look at it too. So it says, returns to Ohio and relocation to West Allis, Wisconsin. Excuse me. After his return to Ohio, Dahmer initially lived with his father and stepmother and insisted on being delegated numerous chores to occupy his time while he looked for work. He continued to drink heavily, and 2 weeks after his return, Dahmer was arrested for drunken disorderly conduct. He was fined $60 and given a suspended 10-day jail sentence. Dahmer's father tried unsuccessfully. He tried unsuccessfully to wean his son off alcohol. In December 1981, he and Dahmer's stepmother sent him to live with his grandmother in West Allis, Wisconsin. Dahmer's grandmother was the only family member to whom Dahmer displayed any affection. They hoped that her influence plus the change of the location might persuade Dahmer to quit drinking, find a job, and live responsibly. See, I look at that differently. Initially, Dahmer's living arrangements with the grandmother was harmonious. I can never pronounce that right. He accompanied her to church, willingly undertook chores, actively sought work, and abided by most of her house rules, although he continued to drink and smoke. In the early 1982, Dahmer found employment as a phlebotomist at Milwaukee Blood Plasma Center. He held his job for a total of 10 months before being laid off. Dahmer remained unemployed for over 2 years. during which he lived upon money, whatever money his grandmother gave him. Shortly before losing his job, Dahmer was arrested for indecent exposure on August 8th, 1982, at Wisconsin State Fair Park. He was observed to expose himself on the south side of the Coliseum, in which 25 people were present, including women and children. For this incident, he was convicted and fined $50 plus court costs. Why wouldn't they arrest like that? In January 1985, Dahmer was hired as a mixer at the Milwaukee Ambrosia Chocolate Factory, where he worked from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. 6 nights per week, with Saturday evenings off. Shortly after Dahmer found his job, an incident occurred in which he was propositioned by another man while sitting reading the West Allis Public Library. The stranger threw Dahmer a note offering to perform on him. Although Dahmer did not respond to his proposition, the incident stirred in his mind the fantasies of control and dominance he had developed as a teenager, and he began to familiarize himself with Milwaukee's gay bars, gay bathhouses, and bookstores. He is also known to have stolen a male mannequin from a store, which he briefly used for stimulation. Until his grandmother discovered the item, stowed it in the closet, and demanded that he discard it, which I'm sure we've all seen that part. By late 1985, Dahmer had begun to regularly frequent the bathhouses, which he later described as being a relaxing place. But during his encounters, he became frustrated at his partners moving during the act. Following the arrest, he stated, "I trained myself to view people as objects of pleasure instead of people. For this reason, beginning in 1986, he administered sleeping pills to his partners, giving them liquor laced with sedatives. He then waited for his partner to fall asleep before performing various acts. To maintain an adequate supply of this medication, Dahmer informed doctors he worked nights and required the tablets to adjust to that schedule. At approximately 12 such instances, the bathhouse's administration revoked Dahmer's membership, and he began to use hotel rooms to continue this practice. Shortly after his bathhouse memberships were revoked, Dahmer read a report in a newspaper regarding the upcoming funeral of an 18-year-old man. He conceived the idea of stealing the freshly interred corpse and taking it home. According to Dahmer, he attempted to dig up the coffin from the ground, but found the soil too hard and abandoned the plan. On September 8th, 1986, Dahmer was arrested upon charge of lewd behavior for M-ing in the presence of two 12-year-old boys. As he stood close, he initially claimed he had merely been urinating, unaware that there was witnesses, but soon admitted to the offense. The change was changed to disorderly conduct, and on March 10, 1987, Dahmer was sentenced to 1 year of probation with additionally instructions to undergo counseling. You guys see what I'm talking about here? This man got away with a lot, okay? Like, not just one count of indecent exposure in front of women and children, 2 counts of indecent exposure, exposing himself to around 2 12-year-old boys, and he still doesn't go to jail. He still does not serve any time. He gets probation and has to go to counseling. First time, he gets probation and a fine. Second time, I don't even think he got a fine the first time. Second time, it's a fine, probation, and counseling. How? I'm just saying that every single person that this man has came in contact with who had authority, anything, He was enabled in some way, shape, or form. He got away with so much. That is why he continuously did what he did. That's what pisses me off about this. So many times this man could have been stopped. So many times. And he always got away with it. Always, always. So that brings me to even the whole beginning of, like I told you guys, when they saw that he had a hernia operation, they knew that there were things wrong. They did not do anything. Okay. His grandmother finds him with a mannequin. She does nothing. I don't think that it was a good idea, in my opinion. It just shows how much this man was enabled. Why would you let him move in with his grandmother? Okay, I understand that his grandmother was the only person who he responded to with affection and things like that. You can tell that his father was very, very not like affectionate with his son in any way. Like, it's okay to give your son a hug, and you could see that very clearly on the series, how, he came from the army. He went to go give his father a hug, and his father stopped him and just shook his hand. There's nothing wrong with showing your child affection as a father. And I don't think that Jeffrey Dahmer got any of that affection from not only just his mother, but his father as well. And what? I don't know what that means. But anyway, so then, because he's so hard to handle, you let him move in with his grandmother. Pretty much you just pawned him off to his grandmother. Wouldn't that make you think, okay, that when he moves in with his grandmother, that's just going to enable him to get worse? Because his grandmother, she's elderly, she's more of a pushover, so it's going to be easier for him to get away with things. You found the mannequin in his bed, okay? That shows you how he's enabled. The grandmother finds a mannequin in his bed. Okay. You pretty much put it in the closet and have him get rid of it instead of addressing the problem and trying to figure out, wait a second, why do you have a mannequin? What's going on? It's taking the mannequin out of his bed, putting it in the closet, and telling him to get rid of it. That's not addressing the issue at all, right? Everything was deflect in this family, and the deflection continued to enable him constantly. All right, I'm going to read a little bit more. Okay, so in his late 20s and early 30s, on November 20th, 1987, Dahmer, at the time residing with his grandmother in West Allis, encountered a 25-year-old man from Michigan, Stephen Toomey, at a bar and persuaded him to return to the Ambassador Hotel in Milwaukee, where Dahmer had rented a room for the evening. According to Dahmer, he had no intention of schmurdering I don't know, I'm not saying his name right, I apologize, but rather intended to simply drug him and lie beside him and explored his body. The following morning, however, Dahmer awoke to find Toomey lying beneath him on his bed, his chest crushed in and black and blue, with bruises. Blood was seeping from the corner of his mouth and Dahmer's fist, and one forearm was extensively bruised. Dahmer stated he had no memory of having murdered Toomey, and later informed investigators that he could not believe this had happened. Now, this was the first time that he did this. I personally don't think that was an accident. I think he did that. I think he planned to do that. I don't think it was an accident in any way, shape, or form. I think that man knew exactly what he was doing. He had been yearning to do it for so long. And even the fact that, getting into his mind a little bit, and I'm going to show an interview in a minute, but it's like, you wanted a partner. Okay. And I don't think people think of the magnitude of him saying this. You wanted a partner that literally was completely 100% submissive to you. Okay. Submissive to you to a point where you didn't want them to do anything. You wanted to be the one to dominate that partner, to just lay there and let you do whatever you want to do, basically like they're a fucking mannequin, right? I mean, that's what he wanted. Okay. People, that is obviously not only narcissistic, but the most selfish thing I've ever even, like, that is the most selfish thing that you could ever think of, right? And obviously, in my opinion, people may disagree, but I also think that the reason why he wanted this is because he was ashamed of being gay. That's just my opinion. Some people I've told this to, they disagree with me. I just feel like in a lot of ways he hated himself for being gay. It was never accepted, even though there has been many times that even his father has gotten a lot of clues that his son was gay. It was never acknowledged. Obviously, I don't know how Christian they really were, but um, pretended to be like a Christian family. I truly believe that the reason why he wanted to be so dominant and didn't want anything done to him and didn't want to have a normal relationship, okay, is because he hated himself for being gay. Okay. Which is very, very sad in a lot of ways. He is something that he's never, in my opinion, never accepted about himself. He was ashamed of it. He didn't want to be gay, but he was. And that's why I feel that dominance and him wanting to be in complete and total control of his partner and for them to be 100% submissive to him, almost like zombie like, and just going by the demand of his orders, that to me has a lot to do obviously with dominance, but I think that that stems from him hating the fact and being ashamed that he was gay. That's how things were back then. People thought you made boys weak by showing them affection, and a lot of things were best dealt with by sweeping them under the rug. Absolutely. However, I think even regardless, if you, first of all, his father has very, very much stated that they knew when he had hernia surgery that there was something wrong. If you knew that there was something wrong, most people don't acknowledge those things at all. The fact that they even acknowledge it, then they knew it existed and they ignored it. It should not have been swept under the rug, especially if it was after hernia surgery. I could see if he just started acting like that randomly, but it happened after a surgery. He could have easily went to the doctor who performed the surgery and said, hey, he's been acting very different. They get suggested, like, things should not, and I definitely know that there's a stigma around mental health, and there always have been, especially back then, a huge stigma. But in the same sense, with him, with Jeffrey Dahmer, I feel like there's a lot of things that were swept under the rug with a lot of people back then, and they don't turn out like this. That's why I say he was doomed from the start, because nothing was acknowledged with him. Everything was enabled. Every single person that he came in contact with, even people of authority like judges and police officers, okay? They literally put a 14-year-old little boy on a platter and served it to him, the police officers. Don't even get me started. He has been nothing but enabled through this entire thing. There's so many times that he could have been stopped. That's what pisses me off about this man. There's so many people that just enabled this man to a point that it's just like, are you freaking serious? Wait a minute. He could have been stopped so many times. So it just, it makes me mad. It really does. Okay, where was I? Where was I? Okay, I think I was here. No, I wasn't there. Hold on. There's so much. There's so much. So his first victim, he's basically trying to say that he did not mean to do that. Like, that was an accident. He woke up and he saw basically that he was crushed. His chest was crushed. He didn't mean to do it. Blah, 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 blah. That's a lie. I don't believe him. So following the murder of Tuomi, Dahmer began to actively seek victims. So that's what I'm saying. That's why I don't believe that that was an accident and that he just woke up and it just appeared that way. Because then I feel like if you continue to do it after that, that means that you did that on purpose, in my opinion. That was premeditated. Okay. So then, most of whom he encountered in or close to gay bars, and whom he typically lured to his grandmother's home, he would then drug his victim with, is it triazolone? Diazepam, before or shortly after engaging in S activity with them. Once he had rendered his victim unconscious with sleeping pills, he then murdered them by strangulation. 2 months after Tuomi, Dahmer encountered a 14-year-old Native American male prostitute named James, is it Doxtator? I don't know. I might be saying that wrong. Doxtator, who had run away from home to escape his abusive father. At a bus stop outside a former nightclub called the 219 Club, Dahmer lured Doxtator to his home with the offer of $50 to pose for him in pictures. At Dahmer's West Allis residence, the pair engaged in S activity before Dahmer drugged Doxtator. After having S with Doxtator unconscious body, Dahmer then did what he always does to his victims. On the floor of the cellar, Dahmer left the body in the cellar for 1 week before dismembering it in much the same manner as he had with Tuomi. He placed all of Doxtator's remains, excluding the skull, in the trash. The skull was boiled and cleansed in bleach before Dahmer noted he had been rendered too brittle by the process. He pulverized the skull 2 weeks later. So these are basically all the things that he did to his victims, okay? This 14-year-old little boy, and I don't understand why they're not telling the story of that, but this 14-year-old little boy, this is a 14-year-old little boy, he literally escaped. And there were literally 3 women when he escaped the apartment. You guys all know the story. He escaped the apartment. He got away. There were 3 women there, called the police to help him, and the police came. Jeffrey Dahmer came out and said that that was his boyfriend and that they were having a fight. They had a disagreement. The cops led him right back into Jeffrey Dahmer's home. That literally, even the time that Jeffrey Dahmer was officially caught, the only reason why he was caught is because the police officers wanted to know where their keys were to handcuffs that were on his potential victim. That's the only way that they would have ever known. Okay? They were not suspicious of him at all. You want to know why? Because he was in a black neighborhood, and if anything, they were probably secretly warning Jeffrey Dahmer to be careful in the neighborhood that he was in, when all the time they were the ones that should have been careful of him. It's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. He was the definition of white privilege. He was an alcoholic who was ashamed of his sexuality, but did zero to try to control any urges. And the police turned their eyes to the other way. Absolutely, Jill. Absolutely. Those women did everything to save that poor baby. They did. It's such a sad story that, like, literally, guys, I cried because that little boy could have been saved. He could have been saved. And it seriously till this day bothers me that those police officers were even reinstated. Like, you saw there was blood coming from his backside everywhere, and you literally just walked him right to his freaking, oh my gosh. That's probably one of the most saddest stories I've ever heard because he could have been saved. Yeah, that pissed me off. That child looked like a child in real life. Ain't no way they should have thought he was. Exactly. And to be honest with you, looking at him, you could tell that he was pretty much a baby. Any other police officers would have said, okay, well, I need to see his driver's license to show what his age truly is. If his driver's license shows that he's 19, then fine. But if it doesn't, we're going to take him to the hospital because it's obvious that he is injured. They just didn't care, okay? Because he was a minority. They did not give a shit. The sad part is Dahmer stopped caring about being low-key after a while. He was quite sloppy with his methods. Absolutely, James. He was very sloppy towards the end. He literally towards the end of him doing everything that he's doing, he was very sloppy. I 100% agree, James. Like, he literally just, it's almost as he might as well have just did it right in front of them. There was a time that he got caught with a body in his car. The cops pulled him over. He's drinking. They knew he was drinking, and they still let him go. That's what pisses me off about this situation, is that he was enabled by everyone. Everyone. Yes, thank you guys so much for keeping the chat respectful. Hey, Rianne. There were multiple complaints of weird noises and bad smells coming from his apartment by his neighbors, but it was never properly investigated. I know. And that's what pisses me off too. Like, this woman called daily, okay? And nothing was ever done. Nothing. I think the reason is because people had rights back then and cops minded their own business. Things were better back then for people. I don't know about that. I can't agree with that 100% because I feel like in my personal opinion, and I see what you're saying, Rich, but in my personal opinion, I don't think they cared. I don't think that they cared because Jeffrey Dahmer was in a predominantly Black neighborhood. And I just don't think they cared. It wasn't even about minding your own business. If you see a 14-year-old child, okay, and they didn't know his age, granted, but all you had to do was look at that kid's face. He was completely gone, okay? He was completely incapacitated, blood coming from his backside, and you literally just lead him back up to, just because you took this man's word, Jeffrey Dahmer's word. To me, there's no excuse for that, in my opinion. There's just not. The police were clearly racist, laughing as they reported it. It was just an Asian male in a domestic stitch with Dahmer. Right, Elsie's. I agree. Hey, The Real Rant Room. Thank you for stopping by. I appreciate you. I hope you're doing well. His place, I heard it was really, really bad. Was just going to state that, yes, he was stopped by a cop with a dead body in his trunk. Yes. So many times they could have stopped him. He deliberately moved to a neighborhood with minorities. He was a predator, alcohol or not. Amen. Yeah, he deliberately moved there for a reason. And I think even though he doesn't blatantly admit to it, I think that he preferred, and this is where people can agree to disagree with me, I think that he preferred Black males. Now, don't get me wrong, he has he has had white victims too, but the predominant of his victims were Black, and I think he preferred Black males because he knew nobody would care. That's just my opinion. He was smart enough to know that nobody would care if he's going around killing Black males than versus white. Depending where you lived in the US, just like now, depends on how things are taken care of. Right. So I'm going to pull up this interview really quick. We're not going to watch the whole interview, just a little part of it, because I feel like this gets into the minds of him. It's a very creepy interview, but I think it's necessary to watch. And it gives you so much of a clear, I don't know, just how he was as a person. You know what I mean? And of course, even when he was in prison, here he is getting interviews and getting mail from fans and with money in it. Like I said, he even had it made when the man was in fucking prison. I'm sorry. Okay? Like, it. Lord Jesus, it pisses me off. Okay. So I am going to show this interview by Inside Edition. I think it's interesting. I'm sure some of you have watched it. Some of you may not have watched it, but I just want to show this one. So hold on one second while I bring it up.
New organic grass-fed milk chocolate by Hue. 5 delicious flavors with new
and Cannibal, whose saga of evil has been given new life in the hit Netflix series Monster.
I'm going to ask you some questions that are tough.
In this never-before-seen video from the Inside Edition archives, he's clearly nervous. His hands won't stay still as he prepares for the exclusive 1993 interview.
What questions do you start with?
A new generation is learning about his horrifying crimes through the #1 Netflix series.
In what appears to be a psychopathic mass murder.
Destination 32 clear.
This world-exclusive interview took place inside the maximum security prison in Wisconsin, where he was serving 999 years. He was escorted by 3 prison guards. One officer held each arm as he was taken in handcuffs into an elevator. Nobody was taking any chances with the most notorious killer in America. Dahmer was 33 when he told Nancy Glass about his twisted motive for killing 17 men.
Not because I was angry with them, not because I hated them, but because I wanted to keep them with me. And as my obsession grew, I was saving body parts such as skulls and skeletons. And eventually I did turn to cannibalism.
This is for you.
He described how he picked up his victims in gay bars and brought them home.
I'd have the sleeping pill mixture already prepared. Person would drink it, fall asleep, and that's when they would be strangled.
And he made a startling admission about the evil urges that propelled him to kill.
Do you still feel those same urges? Do you still feel that compulsion, that obsession?
I wish I could say that it just left completely, but no, there are times when I still do have the old compulsions.
A creature of the night, he said he slept most of the day in prison. During the interview, he asked for several breaks.
Can we cut the film here for a minute?
Sure.
Dahmer was murdered by another prison inmate just a year and 10 months after this interview, a form of justice he said he deserved.
That's what I deserve. I deserve death.
Hold on, there's one more I want you guys to see. It's almost depressing all the way around watching it, but it almost makes me wonder also, like, why even do this series? I know that a lot of people are fascinated with him And at first I thought that the Jeffrey Dahmer's father did let the doctors explore his brain, which I think that would have been actually good to do, but he denied for them to be able to do that. Personally, in my opinion, I just don't understand. I really feel uncomfortable. Even though the series was good, okay, and what is his name? Evan? What's his last name? You guys know the actor who played Jeffrey Dahmer. He killed it, but I also worry for him. And we'll talk about that after watching the interview. I'll tell you guys what I think. I worry for him because this interview is this acting role is so dark. And he did such an amazing job as Jeffrey Dahmer. Like literally. So he is actually from, what is that show called? What is that show called? Oh my God, it's like on the tip of my tongue. I can't think of shit. It's from Netflix, isn't it? American Horror Story. That's where he's from. And he is a phenomenal actor. I think he's a very underrated actor. But playing Jeffrey Dahmer, I mean, he had everything down to the accent of Jeffrey Dahmer. Okay? Everything. Like he had to immerse himself into being Jeffrey Dahmer. And imagine trying to get into the psyche of Jeffrey Dahmer and trying to be exactly like him. Like that has to be mentally unhealthy for anyone, in my opinion. Okay, let me see if I can find this interview that I watched. Is this it? Yeah, I think this is it.
People ask me, how do you apply a whole body deodorant? And here, I will show you. I will demonstrate. Take a piece of...
Hi, Jeff. Sherry, how are you? Good to see you. Good to see you. Hi, Jeff. Just want to go.
Steady. Nothing out of the ordinary, really.
You've read the book?
Yes, I read the book. My dad sent it to me about last week, and spent all night reading it. I was up all night reading it. It was quite a surprise to me, some parts of it. Very interesting.
In what sense?
Just some of the things that were revealed caught me off guard, and just some very big surprises in it for me.
What was it that caught you off guard?
Some of his insights into what he thought of me as I was growing up.
All set? Everybody ready? Okay, let's take a deep breath. Your dad comes here to visit about once a month, but I get the impression that the two of you don't talk a lot about everything that happened, about the crimes in particular.
No, we don't discuss that because it's been gone over so thoroughly in the papers and the media that there's just really no point in going into any in-depth talks about it. We talk about our family, home, how things used to be, what prison life is like here now, and try to keep things as light and upbeat as possible.
Is it hard for you to go back and talk about those things?
No, not the good things. In fact, it gives me a sense of comfort to talk about the few good times there were in the past.
You say the few good times. Do you think of your childhood as having been profoundly unhappy?
No, not profoundly. My childhood wasn't filled with any great tragedies or anything. There were good times and there were bad times. I think it was fairly normal.
Jeff, do you remember your earliest experience, an earliest interest, fascination with the inside of animals? Where that came from?
In ninth grade, in biology class, we had the usual dissection of fetal pigs. I took the remains of that home and kept the skeleton of it. And I just started branching out, dogs, cats. I suppose it could have turned into a normal hobby like taxidermy, but it didn't. It veered off into this. Why, I don't know. All I know is that I wanted to see what the insides of these animals looked like.
Was there some pleasure in the cutting open of the animal?
Yes, there was. No sexual pleasure, but just it's hard to describe.
Sense of power, sense of control?
I suppose that's a good way of putting it, yeah.
I can sort of see a fascination for, wanting to see or for looking at the insides of animals, say for the first time. After you did it one time, what more is to be gained by looking at another dog's inside, the second or the third?
I don't know. It became a compulsion, and it switched from animals to humans. I still don't understand it. I don't know why.
What would you do with the dead animals, Jeff? You would pick the carcasses up from the road and take them back into the woods.
Take them back in the woods, skin them sometimes, slit them all the way open, look at the organs, feel them. There was a sort of general excitement for me. I don't know why. It was exciting to see.
One of your dad's biggest questions is when you began to slip away, when you crossed over into this world of obsession or dark fantasy from which you just couldn't return. Can you pinpoint that? Is there a sense for when that really began to happen with you, Jeff?
I think it was around age 14 or 15. Started having obsessive thoughts of violence intermingled with sex. And it just got worse and worse. I didn't know how to tell anyone about it, so I didn't. I just kept it all inside.
Do you have any sense for where that was coming from?
No. No, I've talked with a few psychologists about it. They have their theories, but they don't have any concrete answers either.
Do you have a theory?
No, not really. I don't know where it came from. I probably will never know. But I never dreamed that it would become a reality.
Comprehend. What?
Okay, so here's my theory. My theory is it started with his dad. And I'm maybe not the S part, but as far as him getting enjoyment out of doing that, I think it stems from his father. And I also think that it stems him not being able to have that courage to confide in anyone. I think it stems from him being so neglected as a child. Okay. Not having any type of emotion or empathy, all of those things, I do feel stems from him being neglected as a child. Him not being able to confide in his parents about anything. For goodness sakes, his dad hardly would even hug him. Okay. He probably felt uncomfortable, excuse me, going to his parents, or even I feel like he was the closest with his dad versus his mother. I feel like the reason why he didn't confide in his father, of all people, even though he was very close to his father, is because he didn't know how to communicate that. I don't think he was taught any of those things to communicate what empathy is, what compassion is. I feel like that was all from him being neglected and his parents being obviously very selfish with their arguments and not worrying about their child.
was it, Jeff, that took you over the edge, do you think, and made you take this from the world of fantasy into reality?
From 15 on, I had this reoccurring fantasy of meeting a hitchhiker on the road and of taking him hostage and doing what I wanted with him. About 3 years later, I was 18 years old, driving home. I saw this hitchhiker about a mile from my house. Thought to myself, should I stop and pick him up, or should I just keep on going? I wish I just kept on going, but I didn't. Turned around, picked him up, and that's when
Again, this is under fair use commentary. I forgot to say that. And one thing I want to say, just even right here, him saying, I wish I hadn't picked him up. That was with no emotion, no remorse at all. Okay. He literally said, I wish I hadn't. Even the way he's talking about it, like it's almost as if him talking about it is he's reliving it, and he's reliving it in a way that's giving him pleasure, even talking about this in this interview. That's just my opinion.
That's when the nightmare became a reality. It just seems so bizarre to me that this obsession that I had been thinking about and wanting, just all the parts are there, and they make it possible to make it happen.
What happened after you took him to the house?
The house was empty. My mother was up in Chippewa Falls with her family, and my dad was living in a rented motel about 5 miles away due to the divorce. And I pretty much had the place to myself. I was drinking a lot during that time, and just, I don't know, looking for something to, some way to find some fulfillment, some pleasure. And I acted on my fantasies, and that's where everything went wrong.
There is even another sign of how neglectful and selfish his parents were. She left, they're getting divorced. She left and went to see family members. His father is 5 miles away in a hotel. Okay. You knew that your son was an alcoholic, and yet you leave him in a house alone. Like, I don't care how old your child is. Why wouldn't you? Maybe he didn't know, thinking critically, maybe he didn't know that the mother had left, which I'm sure he did. Why would you leave him alone? Like, it just shows you how much they were so wrapped up in their own problems, okay, their own emotions, and so selfish that they completely neglected him from a child until obviously the rest of his life. Then you start caring about him and trying to show him emotion after he's done everything that he's done. A little backwards there.
This was the summer of 1978 when you took your first victim.
Right. Once it happened the first time, it just seemed like it had control of my life from there on in. The second occurrence was 1984, roughly. And I met this guy at one of the bars, downtown Milwaukee bars. We went back to the hotel, just planning on getting drunk. I had put some sleeping pills in his drink to render him unconscious. And was just going to spend the night with him. When I woke up in the morning, my forearms were bruised, and his chest was bruised, and blood was coming out of his mouth. He was hanging over the side of the bed, and I have no memory of beating him to death, but I must have. And that's when it all started again.
And once it started again, you found it impossible to stop.
Right. That's when the obsession went into full swing.
Did you ever tell yourself, I have to stop this? I must stop doing this?
Yes.
When it was going on?
After the second time, it seemed like the compulsion to do it was too strong, and I didn't even try to stop it after that. But before the second time, things had been building up gradually, going to bookstores, going to the bars, the gay bars, bath clubs. When that wasn't enough, buying sleeping pills and using it on various guys in the bath clubs. It just escalated slowly but surely. And after the second time, which was not planned, it was out of control. It felt like it was out of control.
Where did sex enter in to the killings, Jeff?
It was a big part of it. My only objective was to find the best looking guy that I could. Their sexual preference didn't matter to me.
Did their race matter to you?
No, their race didn't matter to me. The first two young men were white. The third young man was American Indian. The fourth and fifth were Hispanic. So no, race had nothing to do with it. It was just their looks.
Was there something sexual in the dismemberment of the bodies for you?
As time went on, yes, I did get there was a sexual part to that. I started saving the skeletons and preserving other parts, and one thing led to another. It took more and more deviant type behaviors to satisfy my urges, and so it just spiraled out of control.
Why the cannibalism?
It made me feel like they were a permanent part of me. Besides the just mere curiosity of what it would be like, it made them feel that they were a part of me, and it gave me a sexual satisfaction to do that.
Was it the killing that excited you, or is it what happened after the killing?
No, the killing was just a means to an end. That was the least satisfactory part. I didn't enjoy doing that. That's why I tried to create living zombies with uric acid in the drill, but it never worked. No, the killing wasn't the objective. I just wanted to have the person under my complete control, not having to consider their wishes, being able to keep them there as long as I wanted. It's not easy to say that, but that's what the motive was.
Where did that need for control come from? Do you have any idea?
I don't know. Maybe I felt I had no control as a child or young adult, and that got mixed in with my sexuality, and I ended up doing what I did was my way of feeling in complete control, at least for that situation, creating my own little world where I had the final say, finding the best looking guy that I could, and having total mastery over him for as long as I wanted. Lust played a big part of it, controlling lust. That was the motive right there.
A lot of this came out in the course of the trial. Obviously, both of you sat through this. Have the two of you sat down and talked about these things before?
No, not in depth.
This is the first time you're talking about these things with
I've talked
your
about
dad
it
here.
at great length with psychiatrists, court-appointed psychiatrists, psychologists, but not with my family.
We learned everything at the trial and in the confessions.
That was actually interesting what you said, and any of your comments, don't hold back. Whatever you think, make sure you say it. which that was interesting. What I just put, James says it was evil and he knew it, but interestingly enough, Dahmer is pretty much the only serial killer who was not thought of to be a psychopath. So that's interesting to me. Where did you hear that, James? If you could elaborate. He was born insane, in my opinion. Otherwise, he could have had normal relations with men. So studying his brain would be necessary. See, that's what I think. Like, to me, even with his father, even after he was caught, and he was caught towards the end, and his father finally wants to show him affection and emotion and all of those types of things after he was caught, blaming himself, making up all kind of excuses as to why his son is the way that he is. You wrote a book, but yet I understand his right to choose. He doesn't want doctors searching through his son's brain, but I think it definitely would have helped. It could have contributed something to society to help, as far as when it comes to psychopaths and serial killers and stuff like that. Like, it could have, in my opinion, because you wrote a book. So you obviously capitalized off of this, in my opinion. You made money off of this. You even pleaded with some of the victims' families to speak on your son's behalf. Okay? There was nothing but excuses, even when he was caught. And it's you blaming yourself and blah, 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 blah. And a lot of it definitely is the parents' fault. In my opinion. But why not let them research his brain? Why not? You made money every other way. Why not help, for maybe the future by letting them research his brain to see what was the cause of this? Was there some kind of problem that he had in his brain to make him do the things that he has done? Because there are a lot of kids, obviously, that's the main problem. There are a lot of kids who are neglected. They don't turn out like him. But in my opinion, in a lot of ways, the reason why he chose to do the things that he did is because he hated himself. He hated himself for being gay. James says, just thought it was an interesting point to bring up. We need to understand the human mind and how this can occur to help stop. Exactly. That's why I think that would have been wonderful if they would have been able to explore his brain. I know they did it with John Wayne Gacy, which we will be talking about him soon as well. But you saying that they didn't look at him as a psychopath, I don't see how not. He has no emotion, no empathy, no remorse, nothing. Psychopaths are aware of the effect on humanity. Psychopaths are not. Sociopaths are aware of the effect on humanity. Psychopaths are not. Right. He didn't even have the worst upbringing as admitted, unlike millions of others, yet they don't. Exactly. There's no financial incentive when donating your body to science. Well, I'm talking about the book. Okay. He made money off of the book. I'm saying that still could have contributed to society for the future if he would have let scientists research his brain. That's what I'm talking about. Like, it could have contributed. It could have helped in some way, shape, or form to see if there was something wrong with his brain and why he was like this. Obviously, he's one of the most notorious cannibal serial killers. Okay. So I think that would have been a good thing that his father could have done, for others who have a discrepancy in the brain and things like that. I'm not talking about financially. Sociopaths can be made by their choices and the environment around them. People can develop the ability to turn off empathy or objectify people, etc. Yeah, I get what you're saying by that. Post-mortem of the brain, except for diseases, etc., not ingrained personality traits, etc. Whereas psychopaths were both that way, from what I've heard. That's very interesting. Keep your comments coming. I want to read them all. He was more than likely a sociopath, not a psychopath. Yeah, that's what I would think. Just like who was it? What's his name? Oh my gosh, all this like serial killers' names, which he technically was a cult. Charles Manson. There was a lot of serial killers who loved animals. Like they would prefer to murder or kill a human being versus an animal. You know what I'm saying? So there's a lot of definitions that I think, and I still struggle with the meanings of sociopath and psychopath. You know what I mean? Like it's definitely something that I have to do more studying on. Hey, Hannah, I'm covering this case too. I shared the same interview yesterday. This guy definitely has a sign of psychopath. They start with animals, then they move on to humans. His father had dreams to kill. I know that's another thing too. His father did. Gacy denied to his dying day that he never killed all of his victims with outlandish excuses, that he had a party house. He never took accountability. No, he didn't. He never took any accountability. It's part of the triad of psychopathy. Absolutely. Okay. 1 second here.
And that sort of thing after the fact.
The two of you never really communicated all that much, did you, father and son?
Not on any deep level, no. We talked about superficial things. Never really had a real deep heart-to-heart talk about what was going on inside our own minds. I was always a very private person. I didn't like to open up and share anything with anyone. I like to keep my thoughts to myself.
Why do you think that was?
Because from about 15 years on up, a great deal of my thoughts were basically unshareable with anyone. So I just closed myself off and put on a mask of normalcy.
You've read the book.
Right.
He called it a father's story. Pretty simple title.
Right.
Not a simple story, though.
No, not a simple story. Not one that was easy for me to read. But I'm glad he wrote it.
Did it hurt? Was it painful to read?
Yes, it was painful. Some parts of it were, for me, were even fun to read. There were good parts. It wasn't all negative.
Was it emotional for you reading the book?
Yes, it was.
Tell me, what kind of feelings did you have reading it?
Deep regret, sorrow. I guess those were the two main emotions.
Is there anything in this book that you strongly disagree with?
Yes, I disagree with the description of me as being so incredibly shy and introverted, because maybe that's the way my dad saw me, because there was so much tension in the home that I really didn't feel like being up and happy a lot of the times. But with my friends in school, I had a good time. We had good social life, and so I wasn't so extremely reclusive and self-centered as it portrays me.
Does it surprise you to hear Jeff say that he doesn't think of himself and never did as innately shy?
It did surprise me. Maybe my perception was accentuated.
I'm loving these comments. I want this to start a discussion, especially what I'm going to say after this interview. No needle and thread. A long time ago I did, though. when I was younger, and you know, when you're younger, you really don't understand things as much as you do when you get older. Psychology was one of my favorite subjects in college. So back in the day, when I was younger, and obviously a lot of my professors in psychology class and different psychologies that I took would very much talk about Jeffrey Dahmer. And I'm going to be honest with you, I used to feel bad for his father until now that I'm older, and as a parent, no. And the reason why is because the one thing that I will say about Jeffrey Dahmer's parents as a whole is they are the prime example of, how do I put this? They're the prime example of not everybody are meant to be parents. Okay. There are some people who are very much vocal. Still to this day, there are creators that I watch that do not have kids, and they will say, I am not having kids. I'm not bringing kids into this effed up world. Then you'll hear some people say, I'm too selfish to bring kids into this world. I respect people like that because not everyone has to have a kid. And I think there is obviously this whole, I don't know, stereotype that every woman should have a child. Okay. Because a lot of people think that's what women are here for, and every woman should want to have a child. And that's not true. Not every woman wants to have a child, and that's okay. I have more respect for women who will just admit, look, I don't want to have kids, and won't do it, than for other women who have children simply because they think they're supposed to. You know what I'm saying? Or simply because they think this is what I have to do. If you don't want to have kids, do not have kids. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. I feel like Jeffrey Dahmer's parents, they just weren't meant to be parents, in my opinion. Especially, maybe just to him. I know he has brothers, but that's just my opinion. Not everyone is meant to be a parent. And emotionally, they were too wrapped up in themselves that they very much neglected their son. And I think that they just never came to terms with that. Never came to terms with the fact that they just weren't meant to be parents. And I feel like, in my opinion, he was doomed from the start. Let me read some comments here. So sociopaths have emotion. They're open with their crimes. Their emotions. Psychopaths are not. They'll blame the doorknob before themselves. True. Psychopaths are more, I think, narcissistic. I don't. Joby, you don't feel bad for, I don't either. I used to, like I said, when I was younger though. And then when you get older and you become a parent, it's like, okay, there's so much that they could have done and they didn't. And they ignored and neglected and deflected. And he knew for a very long time that his child was gay. Okay. He knew for a long time, way before he became an adult. And instead of addressing it and talking to his son, I understand that obviously being gay back then was a lot harder back then than it is now, even though it's still hard now and people are still judged for being gay. Fuck all those people. But I will say that they ignored so many things. So many signs were there right in front of their faces, and they just sat there and ignored it. Exactly, Needle on Thread. You took the words right out of my mouth. Nope, not one bit sorry for him. Especially to me, I think him writing a book speaks volumes to me. It should speak volumes for so many other people too. I feel like writing a book, I don't agree with that. I want to look into the mind of a serial killer. Why, when, and what? So many questions that makes them do the things that they do. I have always been interested in this sort of stuff. Me too. You got it to a degree, perhaps. His parents may have effed up in certain areas, okay, but they never wanted a mass murderer. It would feel really bad to have that burden. I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying, but I still feel like the burden, obviously, their child is a mass murderer, cannibal, serial killer. The burden with them as parents should be they should have done better to their child. That's how I look at it. Good point, though. Children need to be raised right. Absolutely. Lionel and his mom were narcissistic to a point, even in their parenting. I agree. My brother says that all the time. He says he is selfish and does not want kids, and I've always respected him for that. Absolutely. I respect anyone who is honest because I feel like women are expected to want to have children, and there's some women who have children for all the wrong reasons. And to me, and I'm not saying that even the women who have children for all the wrong reasons, or men, they may have children for the wrong reasons, but they still turn out to be great parents and do right by their children, and then some don't. But the point is that I respect anyone who is straight up honest and says no. Most of the people, especially women that I've met, they will say, I am not bringing a child into this effed up world. It's not going to get any better, and I don't want to bring a child into it. That's what most people that I meet that say that they don't want a child, that's what they say. I don't have kids and I don't want them. I have many nieces and nephews from all walks of life, and that's amazing. Needle and Thread says that is true. That is why I don't want to feel sorry for him. Yeah, I think when it came to the book, once he wrote the book for me, it was a wrap. I knew, but maybe not back then. But now, if you were to have any ounce of empathy or sympathy, whatever, for him, think about him writing the book. I feel like that book, he literally capitalized off of his own child being a serial killer. Sorry, I don't agree with that. And I think that speaks volumes. Tonight's clip. Fuck all those people. There are a lot of people neglected and abused as children, much worse than Jeffrey, who never did anything as bad. His case was outlandish, and I do think that's why it's not his background so much. Now, see, that's where I disagree. I think it has a lot to do with his background. I think, yes, there are a lot of children out there. I think that's the number one question, though. Why is it that some children who are neglected turn out great, and some children who are neglected, for example, Jeffrey Dahmer, turn out to be a serial killer? That's the number one question that no one understands, but it's still, I feel like in his, in his whole position, I do feel like a lot of the reasons why he did what he did is because of him being neglected, and neglected as far as them even knowing that he was having problems after having hernia surgery. There's just things that I feel like that was their responsibility to do as parents that they chose not to do. And this was the outcome of it. And then in some cases, it doesn't turn out that way. Like I said, that's a question that I think the whole world wants to know. You know what I mean? Yes, fuck all those people. I guess everything factors. Right, James? But I am loving how open and honest you are and giving your straight up opinion, and that's what I want. They didn't, but signs were there. I want so many grandkids, but daughter who has a policy. Right, Needle and Thread. I cannot have children, and I have been told I'm lesser of a woman because of that. I can't change things. It is what it is. Yeah, that's ridiculous. You can always adopt if you wanted to have children. No one should think a woman is lesser of a woman because she can't have children of her own. There are women who literally have surrogates. They adopt. It doesn't make you any less of a woman. A mother is a mother regardless of how you are a mother. My brother-in-law and his wife are just like that. They say they're too selfish to have kids. They don't even want anything to do with ours. Yeah, I think maybe that'll change eventually. But as far as not wanting anything to do with yours, but I know so many people who are like that. Joyce had serious on drug addiction from her pregnancy. Throughout his childhood, she let him in that house where he feed his thoughts. Hold on, you guys. Killed his first victim at the age of 18. Rest in peace, Stephen Hicks. Absolutely. Oops. A degree in psychology doesn't want children. There's nothing wrong with that. Psych nurse X 3 years. Tate Mental Hospital worked unit. Those who won their cases with the NGRL status, not guilty by reason of insanity. Both are using emotional manipulation. Wow. It's interesting. I decided later in my 30s, when my hubby and I knew we were ready and wanted a child, unless we conceived twins, they are common in our family. I love my daughter and we cannot have any more kids. You can if you want to adopt or have a surrogate or something like that. But as far as you mean like naturally, and that's okay. My daughter says the same thing about this crazy world and bringing children into it. Absolutely. My youngest daughter is in graduate school with aspirations of obtaining her PhD in psychology and wants to work with troubled youth. That's amazing, Victoria. Kudos to her. That's awesome. I think people like Jeffrey are the way they are because of something weird, different in the brain. Maybe, Michaela. I used to say I didn't want to bring a child into this world, but I was told repeatedly thinking like that was selfish and pessimistic. I don't think so. I don't agree with that. I think that comes from people automatically assuming that all women want to have children and then looking at you like you're selfish if you don't want to have children. You understand what I'm saying? Thank you for keeping the chat respectful. All opinions are welcome and encouraged. Absolutely. But sharing his story is important as scientific research. It's good that him and his dad are having interviews, etc. I agree with that. He said he always had a he always had a fantasy. I know what you meant. He always had a fantasy to pick a hitchhiker, have his way with him. So he picked Stephen Hicks and murdered him with a dumbbell. He was 18. Absolutely. That's what he was talking about. Some women don't have children for various reasons. That doesn't make them less of a woman, and that is their right. People need to mind their own business. Amen. No one is lesser than a woman. You are a strong woman. Don't let anyone tell you that. Absolutely. Hey, all. Just showing love also reminds me of the old argument, nature versus nurture. It can be argued both ways, in my opinion. Stop exploiting Summer Wells. Absolutely. I agree with you. I have 6 children. Couldn't imagine my life without them. Me too. I have 3. Couldn't imagine my life without them. But I would never, ever judge a woman who doesn't want to have kids. I respect that. And I think that is her choice. And I respect her right to choose that. And there's a lot of women that have children that should have never been mothers. Amen. I'm raising my 6-year-old niece. I've had her since she was 2, but I definitely feel she is enough for me. I'm 33 already, and I have no biological kids. And that's okay. I think that's awesome that you're helping raise your niece. Absolutely awesome. I haven't seen any research. Is Netflix series close to real life? You mean the series on Jeffrey Dahmer? I think that it pretty much sums up his life and what he did. And I like how they went in depth with some of the victims that he tragically took their lives away. They definitely failed him. He's still completely at fault, but I think they are too at a certain point. I can't imagine having a child and they become a killer. It would be hard to. I know. I never wanted kids after the death of my older brother, but sometimes that changes when the right one enters your life. Now I have 4 little girls. Can't imagine life any other way. Same here. Like, I've always wanted kids, though. Yes, trigger warning. And I'm loving you guys' comments. I don't think we're going to watch this whole interview, probably another like 5 minutes of it. And then I want to tell you about my feelings about this series and what I'm scared of. Okay. So let's finish this.
To the extreme.
But you do recall at age 6 that you became more aware of tensions in the home.
Oh yeah, that's the time I really remember noticing that things weren't quite right.
So it wasn't so much innate shyness as it was wanting to withdraw from tension and arguments and problems in the house.
That's how I saw it. Yeah, I sort of lived in my own little fantasy world when things got too heated in the household, and I carried that over for years, I guess.
And was there violence in that fantasy world?
No, not
early on.
Not that. Not the type that showed itself later. No, it was just my own little world where I had control.
Was anger a part of it for you, Jeff?
I had some anger. Probably every kid has some anger, about their childhood. It really wasn't a terrible childhood, though. There were a lot of good times. It wasn't a really terrible time.
So Pat theories about you as a serial killer striking out to get back at your dad, for instance, don't ring true to you.
No, that has no truth in it. The only motive that there ever was to completely control a person that I found physically attractive, and keep them with me as long as possible, even if it meant just keeping apart.
Did you know before you read this book that your dad had his own obsessions and fantasies, that he had thought about, that he had dreamed of committing murder, that he had had an obsession with fire and with explosives?
No, I don't think that's the type of thing one asks one's dad.
Were you surprised to read that about your dad?
Very surprised. I didn't know what to think about it. I suppose everyone has their secret thoughts, and so it was somewhat of a shock.
You feel grateful that your father wrote this book? Or do you feel put off by it? I mean, I'm just curious about your overall reaction to it. Do you feel is the book an invasion, do you think? Or is it...
No, I feel nothing but pride for him for writing the book, and having the courage to bare his soul when he didn't have to. He didn't have to get involved with trying to help me out and support me and be an emotional support for me. And I'll be grateful to him forever for it.
Did you ever consider talking to your parents, to your dad, about homosexuality? Is that something that you felt you could ever raise?
Early on, I really didn't know that much about it myself. All I knew was that it was something that was to be kept hush-hush, not talked about, not even thought about. So I just kept it all within me and never talked about sexual issues at all, really, with anybody.
Do you think if you had been able to talk about that in a more open way with your dad, for instance, that it would have helped, might have broken this veil of secrecy and enabled you to keep yourself from going down that road?
I don't know exactly what, if anything, would have ever kept me from going down that road. Talking about it, I don't think would have made that much difference, because, like I said, there were things going on in my head that I would have never opened up and talked about with anybody.
Your dad says he never realized how deeply troubled you were because he just thought you were shy the way he had been shy as a boy. Do you think the signs were there and he just missed them?
No, I don't think so. Because I had thoughts, I had fantasies, but there was no outward show of anything that was wrong.
You were pretty good at keeping it all inside.
Right, I kept it inside, didn't share any of my thoughts or emotions with anybody.
So how would I ever know
No, you never saw any of it, as far as I know.
I did not really hear from anyone about any of these activities. And that's what really strikes me now, is if I would have known, what would I have done about it? I think I would have done a lot about it.
I feel it's wrong for people who commit crimes to try to shift the blame onto somebody else, onto their parents or onto their upbringing or living circumstances. I think that's just a cop-out. And my parents, my relatives, had no knowledge of what I was doing. They're absolutely not responsible for any of it in any way. And I take full responsibility.
But you understand that what you did would lead your father to ask himself all kinds of questions.
That's true.
Where did I go wrong? Was there something I could have said or done to have prevented this?
Right.
Did I in some way create or contribute to the terrible acts my son committed?
I understand that. I just get angry with other people who think that they have a right to somehow try to blame my parents for what happened. That's not right at all. No one has the right to do that because they're totally innocent. They had no knowledge of it. And that angers me.
But parents just naturally, I mean, any parent that really cares, they just, first of all, say, gee, I feel guilty. You know, there's just feelings of guilt. What happened? What did I do? What could I have done? So that's a normal parental reaction.
Your dad has wondered about all kinds of things, from the medication that your mom was on during her pregnancy, to the fact that you were exposed to violent arguments in the home from an early age and continuing, to the possibility that he might have passed on some genetic propensity for obsession or violent behavior. Does any of that ring true to you?
I can see why he'd wonder about those things, but as far as I'm concerned, they're all excuses. Because I didn't feel accountable to anybody. I didn't feel that I had to face what I had done ever. And so there comes a point where a person has to be accountable for what he's done. Can't go around making excuses, blaming other people or other things. So I alone am the one who's responsible for what's happened.
Let me ask, when did you first feel that everyone is accountable for their actions?
Well, thanks to you for sending that creation science material, because I always believe the lie that evolution is truth, the theory of evolution is truth, that we all just came from the slime, and when we died, you know, that was it. There was nothing. So the whole theory cheapens life, and started reading books about that show how evolution is just a complete lie. There's no basis in science to uphold it, and I've since come to believe that that the Lord Jesus Christ is the true creator of the heavens and the earth. It just didn't just happen, and I have accepted him as my Lord and Savior. And I believe that I, as well as everyone else, will be accountable to him.
Growing up, did you feel that you were accountable to your dad or to your mom as the authority figure in the house?
Yes, I did. I mean, they didn't let me run wild. They disciplined me. And so I felt accountable to them. But afterwards, after I left the home, that's when I started wanting to sort of create my own little world where I could be the one who had the complete control, where I didn't have to bow to anyone else's demands. And I just took it way too far.
Lionel?
At that period of time, I had drifted away from a belief in a supreme being. And I never, as a result, passed along the feeling that we are all accountable in the end. He owns us. And that basic concept is very fundamental to all of us.
You feel that the absence, at least for a while, of a strong religious faith and belief
for some years
may have prevented you from instilling some of that in Jeff.
That's right.
Is that how you feel?
Yes, I think I had a big part to do with it. I mean, if a person doesn't think that there is a God to be accountable to, then what's the point of trying to modify your behavior to keep it within acceptable ranges? That's how I thought anyway. And I've since come to believe that the Lord Jesus Christ is truly God, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. They're the only true God.
What do you remember about your parents arguing when you were growing up, and what effect that had on you?
It was unnerving, depressing, made me angry sometimes. I'd leave the house, go out in the woods and sulk, brooding, wondering why they had to have such a rough relationship. Most of the time they didn't seem to get along too well together. I never knew what the real underlying problems were. I didn't feel it was my place to ask.
Did you blame one or the other? Mom or dad?
No, I didn't. I was just frustrated that things couldn't be happier around the house.
You just wanted things to be more peaceful.
Right. I never saw any real violent arguments as far as physical hitting or anything like that, but there was a lot of yelling, a lot of tension in the house sometimes.
One of the chilling stories that your dad tells is about the box he had found. Can you give me your perspective on that?
I had a box in my bedroom closet, and it contained the mummified head and genitals of a young man I met in one of the bars down in Milwaukee. And it was a locked metal box. My dad one week came to visit and happened to see it, and we got into a bit of an argument because I wouldn't open it up. He took the locked box down to the basement and was about to smash it open.
What were you thinking as he was making his way downstairs to open the box?
Well, I was outside, and I was thinking I've got to stop this from happening. I didn't know what I'd do or say. I didn't know what would happen. I thought, it's all going to come crashing down now. And but the box was never opened, not in my dad's presence. And so the lies continued. The whole scenario just continued for years after that.
Were there times when your dad may have been closer to discovering what was going on than even he knew? Times where you got worried that maybe he would find something out?
The box incident was about as close as it came, That was just one incident. There were others. But that was a particularly nerve-wracking one.
Are there others you can share?
Other
close calls?
When acidified, dissolved human remains were found, they didn't look like human remains anymore, but they were in the trash bin outside in the garage. That was one incident. And a few others I'd rather not go into right now.
Were you relieved to be arrested?
Part of me was, and part of me wasn't.
Explain.
I don't know. It's like I don't believe I have a split personality, but you know the feeling where you're sort of glad about something, but on the other hand you're not. That's how it was. It was a relief not to have to keep such a gigantic secret that I had kept for so many years. And once I saw that I had no choice but to face it, I decided to face it head on and make a full confession. So I am glad that the secrets are gone.
Your father told me that one of the reasons he wrote this book was in order to put down on paper what he has been unable to say to you in words, kind of reaching out to you. What do you want to say to him, having read this?
I tell you, Dad, I'm really sorry that this has happened, and I love you a lot.
I love you too.
I'm sorry.
Don't be sorry.
We haven't always shown it a lot, but I do love him a great deal.
I love you.
And without
Oh boy. Okay, so you see here all of those times. There's so many times where he has just slid under and gotten away with so many things, you know, with his dad, his grandmother, and not necessarily gotten away. I just feel like they ignored it and pretended like it wasn't there. And to be honest with you, even now, him just stating right there, we haven't always been affectionate with each other. You wait until he is convicted of being one of the most notorious serial killers, cannibal serial killers. You wait until after that to be affectionate with him. That's my problem with his dad. I feel that you wait until all of this to write down on paper, you know, how you feel about him and all of the emotions. Like, to me, this should have happened way before. You know, this should have happened when he was younger. You know, granted, he may not have known when he started or anything like that, but I just feel like the affection, things like that, there were so many things that he was missing from his parents. And that just comes down to how I feel that not everyone is meant to be parents. He's literally caught driving drunk, okay, with a body in the back of his car. They let him go. He has been caught a few times in indecent exposure in front of women, their children, 2 12-year-old boys. They let him go. Okay. When you get away with things for so long, obviously you're going to keep doing it and doing it and doing it. And that's why he's been able to get away with things for as long as he has, is because the people who cared about him the most that he was around ignored all the signs. They just ignored it, in my opinion. I just don't understand why you waited until all of this to be affectionate with your son and to write a book, you know. And like I said, I think that writing the book sealed the deal for me. So many signs, so many times, literally, there was a young boy who escaped him. And like I said, you literally put this little boy on a platter. The police officers put this little boy on a platter and served it. Served this little boy, this young man with his whole future ahead of him, to this psychopath. So that's why it's very hard for me to feel bad for his dad, to feel bad for his mother. I know his mother had mental illness issues as well, but it's just, there are just so many times that this man could have been stopped and it was ignored, swept under the rug. He never had any consequences for his actions, in my opinion. That's why he was able to get away with this for so long. He definitely should have been questioned. Even if the police for 1 second thought, okay, this is his boyfriend. They're obviously having a physical altercation. So let me take them both in and question them. The boy was gone out of his mind, completely incapacitated. And they literally said, oh, well, you know, it's just deflection, neglect, all of those things. It's just disgusting to me. I feel like the dad is just trying to make up for the fact that he had a million chances to address his child mental state. And I'd have some guilt too. Absolutely, Rianne. That's how I look at it. Obviously, And we as parents, like even with my mother and, with my older brother, the problems that he had growing up from adolescence and things like that, as my brother got older, there was so many things that my mother tried to make up for. I think all of us as parents, we try to make up for the mistakes that we made when our children were younger. But the thing is that as parents, our children don't come with a book of instructions, okay? We don't always, not every time, nobody's a perfect parent, right? We're all going to make mistakes as parents, as long as we take responsibility for those mistakes and admit to our mistakes and try to correct those mistakes while it's happening, not when our children get older. But in the same sense, there's a difference between making a mistake as a parent, like being a parent, and sometimes as a parent, you don't want to admit you're wrong to your 5-year-old little boy or girl or whatever. You don't want to admit that you're wrong, but you should, no matter the age. That's a mistake, okay? But neglect, that comes from, if I feel that there's something wrong with my child, like when I found out that my child was having a hard time paying attention to it, like paying attention in school and focusing, I didn't ignore it. I did what I had to do to make sure, does he have ADHD? That's what you're supposed to do as a parent, right? When there are signs in front of your face, you don't ignore it. And if you ignore those types of things when it comes to mental or physical, that's neglect, So those police officers are still police officers today. One is a chief of the department. How can they live with themselves and don't have any guilt? Exactly. I feel you. His mother had mental issues, but still was there as a counselor for others. Never there for him. Neglect. Exactly. The officers got to think about it sometimes, though, I hope. Well, I'm sure they think about it probably every day of their life, I hope. I've watched true crime for years for human behaviors that people start to kill animals or still the urge for a better high increases like an addict. I agree, there are people who still talk of mental health, therapy, psychiatry as important. Exactly. And I think that's the problem too. There's just this huge stigma around mental health and things like that. I understand that. And it was definitely not as acknowledged when, back then. I understand that, but it still doesn't mean, like, just like with his parents, when they couldn't get along, what did they do? They went to counseling, right? You see something wrong with your child, you do something about it. So it's obvious that they did try to do something to help themselves and to help their relationship. They just didn't do anything they were so focused on themselves that they forgot about their child, Exactly. Needle and thread. Exactly. Okay. So there's about actually 4 minutes left. So let's watch the rest of this, which is very interesting, by the way.
Without the support of my folks, I don't think I would have come through this. We've opened up with each other a lot more now since the trial and everything. There's no secrets to be hidden away. I don't feel that I have to keep any secrets from him. We've come to face what's real now instead of just glossing things over and talking about superficial things. So there's a lot more communication between us.
This book may serve as a further bridge between Jeff and myself. And just for that purpose, I regard it as valuable for me.
Do you feel closer to your dad having read this?
I feel closer in that I understand more how he was thinking, what his thoughts were, what some of his motivations were. I'm glad he wrote it.
Anything not in the book you want to say to him?
I can't think too clearly right now. I'm feeling pretty emotional. Well, I think that a lot of things have been brought out in this interview that has brought us to a little bit deeper, just a little bit closer understanding as to how this all originated. And well, whenever I get emotional, my analytical side gets clouded, and I can't express myself quite as well as I would like.
Can you talk about the feelings you have? You feeling close?
I feel very close to Jeff, and it's going to continue till our death. And I feel good about it.
Do you think you'll ever have the answers you've been looking for about why, what happened, and what role, if any, you played?
Maybe not. My primary question is the origins of it. And if something can be learned about that, it may help other people avert problems.
Is it still there, Jeff? Does it ever go away?
In part, no, it never completely goes away. I'll probably have to live with it for the rest of my life. I wish it would go away. I wish there was some way to completely get rid of the compulsive thoughts, the feelings. It's not nearly so bad now that there's no avenues to actually act on it. But no, it never seems to go completely away.
So the thoughts still come to you?
Sometimes, yeah.
Are you different, Jeff, in terms of how you think back on all of this?
I would hope I'm different. I'm glad that I'm in a position now where I don't feel the compulsion to do these things. I'm glad that it's over. Any words I say to the victims' families are just going to seem trite and empty. I don't know how to express the regret, the sorrow, that I feel for what I've done for their sons. I can't find the right words.
All right, see you later, Dale.
After the interview at the prison, Dahmer casually showed us something a little unsettling.
Just a point of interest, that's the type of box.
This is the type of box? He wanted us to know that box looked strikingly like the one his father had found, the one Jeffrey had used to hide body parts.
Thank you, Jeff.
Okay, that was creepy. He's seen a random box and he just goes over and says that was the box. Like, I understand they were just talking about that, but that would be very creepy. Like, obviously, the interviewer, Stone, was freaked out when he did that. Otherwise, he wouldn't have mentioned it. But the reason why I wanted to show this interview, and I'm glad I found it, I will link the channel description below. But the reason why I wanted to, because it does get into his mind a little bit. And there's other interviews. This isn't going to be the last time we're talking about this, especially because everyone else is talking about this series. There's other interviews that I would like to discuss with you guys. I'm so happy. I'm so happy the way that this conversation, everyone's having such a great dialogue and everyone's being respectful. To the person who asked, did the parents, Sandra, I think the parents did file a lawsuit with the police. I'm pretty sure the parents, I'm not sure all parents, but I know the parents of the young boy who was literally brought back to, when the police officers brought him right back to Jeffrey Dahmer's home. I'm pretty sure they filed a lawsuit and won. Okay. And I think that's in this series as well. I don't know about the other parents, but I do know that that little boy's parents, and even though he's 14, he is a little boy, they did file a lawsuit, which is completely understandable. I would have filed a damn lawsuit too. Okay. Because he could have been saved. Okay. So ultimately, I was watching one of my favorite creators, okay? And her name is Lovely Teaya, and she has a podcast And she has something called the Green Room, and she'll do like a live stream where people will talk about different things. And they were talking about this, and I think it's a members only. You have to pay. It's like a Discord, and they do live streams, and you have to pay a certain amount a month. But she does put those live streams on her podcast. If you're interested, I will put it in the description below. She's amazing. But she had a discussion about this series too. And like I told you guys, I believe in predictive programming. I feel that it's very odd it's been how many years? It's been 20, 30 years since this happened, right? And they've had movies and things like that, but why a series and why now? In my opinion, I wouldn't even be surprised because of the way that I think and because I'm a conspiracy theorist, because he's being so glamorized and you have so many people that are being empathetic towards him. And I almost question what Netflix ulterior motive was for even. I feel like they showed different parts of Jeffrey Dahmer in a more relatable light, and nothing about that man is relatable. Okay. And if you relate to him, there's a problem. But regardless, I think there's a reason for it. And I do believe that people try to repeat history, and people can see things, okay, and want to be a copycat. I also think that it's very interesting how they show, which they never really focused on before, how in this Netflix series, that Jeffrey Dahmer was a Satanist, and that he had a shrine, like a shrine in his grandmother's home, and she found it, and it was a satanic, like shrine, like temple or whatever. It was never focused on before, but it's definitely focused on now in this Netflix series, and I think that speaks volumes too, with how much things like Satanism is promoted in a lot of different TV shows right in front of your face, and you don't even know it. But that's what predictive programming is. So I just don't think that this series was necessary. I think there's enough information out there that, you know, I don't know if it's the anniversary or not. I'll have to look that up, Jill B, but I just don't think that it was necessary. I think it's there's different parts of the series that I definitely think that it shows you know, the victims, like the one who was one of his victims who was deaf. And in that he was the one that and I don't know if this whole story is true, but I think it is, because some of the parts in the Netflix series was also added for more, glamorization and things like that to make the movie more dramatic, more interesting. However, he was almost building a relationship with this guy who was deaf. And what I got from it was this guy was deaf. He couldn't speak. And even though, obviously he wants a real relationship, the deaf guy, he wanted a real relationship like any other person, and he's gay, obviously. The fact that he was deaf is something that I think Jeffrey Dahmer was attracted to with this particular guy the most, because that's what he wanted. He wanted his victims, not necessarily for the joy of murdering them. He experimented with his victims, and he would experiment to the point where he would drill a hole in his victim's brain and try to find the part of the brain where you completely shut the body down to where that victim is 100% submissive, almost like in a zombie-like state, right? So I feel like, obviously, with this particular victim, he liked this person. And I think one of the reasons why he did is because he was deaf. He couldn't talk. And that's what Jeffrey Dahmer wanted. He wanted a relationship, but he didn't want the added things that come with a relationship, like talking, okay? Like having a relationship, communication, affection. He wanted to be the one to give affection, but he didn't want the affection to be brought on him. That's not a relationship, obviously. So I feel like with this particular deaf guy that he met, he really did take an attraction to him and wanted a relationship with him until it was time for him to go. And I think he liked the fact that he couldn't speak because it's like, wow, the perfect person. But then you realize, no, he's actually not really that perfect in my eyes, because even though he can't speak and I don't really have to communicate with him that much, he still wants affection. He's still going to get up and leave the next day because he has a life of his own. So in my opinion, I just feel like if you're the type of person that thinks like me, and not everybody does, and that's okay, we can agree to disagree, but I really do feel like this series was unnecessary. I feel like there are so many copycat crazy people out there that would definitely try to do something like this. Maybe not to that extreme, I don't know, but I feel like everything that happens when it comes to Hollywood is predicted. And the reason why they do the things that they do is for a reason. In my opinion, there's a reason why they have so many movies about aliens. In my opinion, there's a reason why they have so many movies about zombies. In my opinion, there's a reason why in Hollywood I feel like they know things that we don't know. And I just don't feel that it was necessary. But I do like how the reenactments of like the courts when there was people confessing to the judge of how much, losing their loved one, how much it impacted their lives. It was spot on, you guys. Spot on. Literally the one lady who lost it, which I completely understand why she would lose it, and almost attacked Jeffrey Dahmer. Literally, they played that act out. She did an amazing job. They did an amazing job on the series. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying I don't feel that the series was necessary. We have enough information out there about that man. Like, we have enough movies that were made about him. Let's stop talking about him. Okay? Let the scientists and all of them try to talk about it and figure out what the fuck was wrong with him and how it started, but I just don't feel it was necessary. All I see throughout the whole series, and obviously Jeffrey Dahmer's real life, is deflection, neglect, ignoring, and people with mental illnesses all around him. Not just with him. I just feel like he was doomed from the start, from his father, mother, grandmother. They ignored everything. They acted like things didn't exist. They knew that he was gay and they ignored it, which therefore made Jeffrey Dahmer hate himself and hate the fact that he was gay. He wasn't proud of the fact that he was gay. And I think that that's one of the reasons why he did what he did and why he wanted to be so dominant and wanted all of his, potential boyfriends in a zombie-like state. It's a lot. Let me read some comments here. Okay, thank you. It was a new one. Have seen others on Netflix a few years back. He had a lot of fans that wrote to him in prison. I couldn't do that. I couldn't write to him. The Netflix is with the actor, not Dahmer, right? What do you mean, Alcis? Like the actor? Yeah, it's with the actor. Yes, his name is Evan. God, what is his name? Somebody probably put his name. Evan Peters, and he's actually one of my favorite actors. I loved him in American Horror Story. He's amazing. He actually, and somebody put this in the comments, he left American Horror Story. He took a break because of the dark roles that he was playing. So that's another thing that I wanted to talk about. If you think about people like Heath Ledger, Jack Nicholson, they both played the Joker. And they both were very, very vocal about how dark that role is. And when you're an actor, you have to immerse yourself in that role. Okay. You have to do a lot of research. And I worry about Evan Peters because I do feel like that was he killed it in that role. Like he was literally Jeffrey Dahmer all over again. That's how eerie it was to me. Okay. Sometimes you couldn't even tell. You're like, wait a minute. So in my opinion, I just feel like I worry about him because I think that that was a very, very dark role that he played, probably one of the darkest that he's ever played. And you have to worry about the mental state of actors when they immerse themselves in a type of role like this. You know what I mean? And doing research and having to be that person. And even though it's acting, just like Heath Ledger said, he had a hard time playing the Joker. He did. And ultimately, he's gone. Even Jack Nicholson said the same thing. He had a hard time playing the Joker role. So I just think that it's very, I just worry. I hope that he's doing fine. I'm sure he is. I'm just saying, I just worry about some actors that play really, really dark roles like this, Evan Peters said it took him to a dark place and he has changed since that role. That's what I'm saying. And it can. Any actor, you have to think of being an actor, especially when you're playing a real life person in this way. You have to do research. You have to put yourself in the positions of that person. And it could literally fuck you up mentally, and it has done that with a lot of actors, So it's definitely, I worry about him. I'll pray for him. I hope that he's okay. And I hope he gets back to a better place. It's also disturbing the amount of money probably paid to them for these interviews and series. It sickens me to think that they got hundreds of thousands of dollars given to Jeffrey and his dad. Agreed. I used to teach back then, and almost half the minority males in my school were medicated. I had one student that stayed drugged up. Very sad. Yes, that is sad. Yes, the mods inform me I will catch private. Hold on. Just shows it's constantly replaying in his head. Yep. A lot of the ADHD knowledge and breakthroughs occurred within the last 10 to 15 years. My son was diagnosed as ADHD when he was just mischievous and competitive. Yeah, my son definitely had a lot of attention problems, but he's doing great now. His father did him a disservice by not allowing science to study his brain. I agree. I got to episode 3 and could not watch anymore. I would say that it's very sad. I watched it because I have always watched the movies with Jeffrey Dahmer. He's definitely somebody that I feel like a lot of people are interested in and fascinated by. How do you turn out this way? Things like that. That's why I feel like his father did a disservice by not letting science explore his brain to figure out, hey, was there a problem? Is it genetic? Whatever. But in the same sense, I just don't feel the series was necessary. I just don't. And I do believe, like, I'm that type of person when it comes to Hollywood, all that stuff. I believe that they know what they're doing, and you just never know. There is a serial killer right now in California, and he has murdered how many victims has it been already? I don't like the fact that they keep making movies about it over and over and over again. Like, how long are you going to keep making movies about it before you just stop? He had a lot of fans. Yes, he had a lot of fans, which is weird in itself. Like, who would, and like I told you guys, very much he has been glamorized. Jeffree Star did a song about him. Okay. There are people who literally, even now to this day, especially after watching this series now, because you have this series, he has new fans now. That people, oh, he just wanted love and he just wanted to be loved. He didn't want to be loved. He didn't want to have anything except for his partners to be in a zombie-like state and not move. That's not love, you know, but you have people making excuses, and it's just like, I don't feel it was necessary to do this series. Thank you, Teaya, for this live. The interview has shown some insight to this monster and how he doesn't blame his parents. You are welcome. There are already so many programs and books on this guy. Why another? Amen, Peg. That's what I'm saying. In my opinion, parents experience some mental issues. That pill popping while pregnant was a big no. Yes, and I do know that his mother, she had a lot of problems when she was pregnant. So she was on some medication. That's why I feel like he was doomed from the start. But in my opinion, to sum it up with Jeffrey Dahmer, there was nothing but people around him with mental illnesses that couldn't see they had mental illnesses and just totally ignored his. And a whole bunch of deflection, someone who just easily got away because he was enabled by the people who allegedly loved him. That's just my opinion. 30-year anniversary of a major crime that was typical for the time it has happened. Horror and real life gore is very popular. If there were no audience for the material, they wouldn't make it. It's not a conspiracy. You mean a conspiracy to me, I'm not saying that it's a conspiracy. However, I am a conspiracy theorist. And somewhat, yes, I do think that there is a reason why Hollywood does what they does. And if you don't agree with that, we will have to agree to disagree, because I do believe that there's a reason why things are shown the way that they are. And there's a reason why there's focuses on different things a lot. And there's a reason for that. And I think that way because I'm a conspiracy theorist. If you don't think that way, that's okay. Symbols all in our faces for years. Absolutely. Now the younger generation that have watched the new series are making TikToks and Dahmer challenges. That's what I'm saying. There's no point in it. You're just introducing this man to a whole new audience that don't even need to know who he is. Okay. He's not a celebrity. Nowhere should he be glamorized or anything like that. Absolutely, Health very much struggle with role. Absolutely, Heath, very much struggled with his role in Batman. He had a huge diary, drawing his own looks, was at my job at modeling, acting as a talent scout, and we were all devastated. I was very sad when Heath Ledger passed away, because I really liked him as an actor, and I really became a bigger fan of his with him playing the Joker. He killed it in that role. He did so good, and rest in peace to Heath Ledger for sure. Sorry if I get some words wrong. I need glasses, you guys. Contacts, I need to put my contacts on. They think that one of his victims that he didn't account for was a very young boy who was missing in 1979. Yes, that's what I heard too. They're trying to introduce Dahmer to a new generation. Do the current stereotypes paragraph. Well, no Hollywood movies exist for most prolific Smurf. He ain't cute. I think when you look back at him, he wasn't that bad looking of a man. Like back then, you know, when he was younger and stuff, he wasn't that bad looking of a man. But obviously the life he led started to wear on him the older he got. But that's just my opinion when it comes to Hollywood predictive programming. I just feel like there's things that they know and they have access to that we don't. And when they're constantly showing the same things over and over and over again, it worries me. You know what I'm saying? But that's a whole new other story for a different day. He's attractive for white women, apparently. Yeah, I think a lot of women thought that he was attractive. He wouldn't have cared about them though, regardless. And I'm Mercer, which is 30 minutes away. A whole family, including a 8-month-old baby, was kidnapped, and they found the bodies last night. Oh, I'm so sorry. That is so horrible. That's what I'm saying. Like, obviously, there's enough going on in the world. I just don't feel that this series was necessary. But in the same sense, I did find a lot of parts of it that were very interesting, and I really liked watching how, some victims, how they showed, the reality of it, and showed how, I feel like in a lot of ways, this story, and I'll end it like this story, this case, everything about what has happened, the focus has always been Jeffrey Dahmer. Okay. We're talking about him now. Yes, it's intriguing. It's interesting. Like, what made this man want to be the way that he is? What made him do the things that he did? Who's to blame in this whole thing? We can all have those discussions, but I think the most important thing is the victims, and nobody ever talks about the victims. The focus of the victims have been lost. And I do like with the Netflix series how they definitely tried to humanize the victims again, because I feel like in a lot of ways these victims were dehumanized, and we all know why they were dehumanized. And in my opinion, it had a lot to do with the majority of them being Black men, Black gay men. Okay. So, but regardless of that, it's still people just lose sight of the victims. And I think that happens a lot with cases. People are more interested in the serial killer. However, I think that needs to change. People need to start focusing on the victims more, including myself. I definitely want to, I think that will be for the next live stream, to just talk about the victims. There's not much detail about all the victims. Like, to me personally, the last guy, who ultimately is a hero because he escaped Jeffrey Dahmer, and he was able to be that one that got him caught because he escaped. And the reason why I say that in a lot of ways I look at him as a hero is because he did what he could to try to escape. But I wouldn't take that away from his other victims either. I think a lot of his victims didn't have a chance. They just didn't. They put their trust in a man that was the devil. But with this particular victim who escaped, it really has taken a toll on him, you guys. Like, if you look at pictures of him now versus back then, you can tell he's traumatized by it. You can tell the victims' families are continuously traumatized by it. And then you have people like Netflix who are making a series. You have people who keep making movies. It's like they're reliving it all over again, you guys. So I think that's why I look at it like the victims and the victims' families aren't focused on enough, because if they were, maybe they would not be making movie after movie, series after series, constantly interviews and all that kind of stuff. I think the victims need to be more focused on, and I definitely will be the one to start doing that, because I don't know much about the victims, and unfortunately, money makes the world go round, and the victims are not as interesting as the perpetrator. So, rest in peace to all 15 victims that fell in the hands of this monster. My heart breaks for them, but my heart breaks for all. Exactly. Amen. Rest in peace to all the victims. And I still continuously pray for the families, because like I said, anytime that the movie's being done, a series, whatever, they're reliving it. And a lot of the victims' families, some people assumed that they were reached out to. They had no idea that this series was being made at all, which speaks volumes. Whoops. In addition, a few were not gay Black men, like Tracy Edwards, only went for modeling, money, and Dahmer have Edward friends. The wrong Yes, not all of them were gay Black men, but the majority were. You know, all the victims' lives matter. But I'm just saying that I think the reason why there's not so much focus on the victims is because they were gay Black men, the majority. Wait, it was half and half. He was not chose why he took, and 3 were known gay men, 1 white, 1 Hispanic, and 1 Black. The others were simply the fast money. 5 from bars or both houses. Some of them were from bars, some of them were from bathhouses, but the majority of them were minority and Black. And that's my point. I wish the victim stories would be focused on more than the perpetrators. I agree. Yes, the one that escaped, that's what I was talking about. The one who escaped, it definitely, you know, he has been arrested a lot since that happened. It's obviously traumatized him. Even when he was on the stand, he couldn't even look at him, which I wouldn't want to look at that monster either. But there was more than 1 Black. Yes, I know. There was more than 1 Black man. And like I said, the majority of them were minority or Black, period. I do know that there was some white men that he killed, but the majority were gay Black men. Yes, just wanted to emphasize, if not for Edwards escaping, Dahmer would have. Oh, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's one thing that makes me also mad, is because the police officers wouldn't have done anything if they didn't see those pictures. If they didn't see those pictures, it would have continued, in my opinion. He would never have been caught. They just wanted to get the key to the handcuffs, and they happened to look in the drawer and find pictures. If those pictures were not there, they wouldn't have done anything but taken the handcuffs, took them off of him, and probably they would have let Jeffrey Dahmer go his merry way and his potential victim go his. Well, he was a victim, but just let him go his too. Wow, that was a fact that some of the families didn't know. It's terrible. They should have been only ones getting paid from the series. No, none of the families, I think, no. The majority, I don't think they talked to every family, but the families that did say that they heard about the series, or when they seen it, they're like, they had no idea that this series was even being made at all. And that's sad. One white man isn't half and half. He preyed on minorities. He did. I will always agree with that. I'm not saying that I know that people don't like the fact that some things are about race. Some people have no problem acknowledging it. Some people don't. But I'm saying that, in my opinion, and I'm entitled to my opinion, and some people may think differently, and that's okay. That's the beauty of being a human being. I think the reason why he targeted minorities, Black men, is because, for the most part, nobody cares. And they didn't, obviously. Otherwise, he wouldn't have lasted so long. I don't feel as though he would have lasted as long on this killing spree if he was only killing one race. Okay? That's just my opinion. Netflix didn't interview the families of the victims. It would have been nice to have their perspective. I agree. They had no idea. Maybe some families did. I don't know. But the families that have spoken publicly, they have said they had no idea that the series was even being made. So it's sad. It's really sad. So you guys did amazing. I love this conversation. I think that I just adore you guys. I think you guys always have such great input. I love hearing you guys' perspectives, even if I don't agree with it. And I'm glad that I got a lot of you guys' opinions and what you think about everything. And I wasn't even sure that there would be a lot of people in this live stream. So thank you guys so much for being here. I'm excited about True Crime Thursdays next Thursday, because that's going to be interesting as well. But I love having these discussions. So thank you guys so much for being here. We will continue to talk about this because I do feel it's important to talk about the victims, and we will. Make sure that you follow me on my Facebook page, and I will put it in the description. And also, if you're a member, make sure you're a part of the members only Facebook, because that's where I'll update people on every true crime case that I cover, every current true crime case that I cover. Obviously not this one, but this was an interesting conversation, and I love having these types of conversations. You guys are amazing. Absolutely amazing. So thank you for being here. I appreciate you guys. I hope to see you guys tomorrow, because we have a lot to talk about tomorrow. A lot. Because I'm going to show you what a lying snake people actually can be, and how they try to make you look like you're just this horrible, selfish person. But it's time to debunk this shit. I already debunked this shit once, but let me debunk it again on behalf, okay? Debunk the people who purposely do things just to set you up to make you look like the bad person, when really they're the bad fucking snakes that crawl around YouTube, okay? Crawl around YouTube looking for prey because they have nothing else to do with their fucking miserable lives but try to make up shit, rewrite history. But I'm about to show you how stupid they're going to look, okay? So I will see you guys tomorrow. Love you guys, and I hope you guys have an amazing rest of your night. Make sure you subscribe before you leave if you haven't already, and press the thumbs up button or thumbs down, whatever. It's all interaction. And also make sure you check the description for everything in the Facebook. And that's it. I think that's it. Wait. That's it. And share. You can do that. You can share. And I know I'm forgetting something, but whatever. I'll remember and put it in the description. Thank you to my amazing mods. Thank you guys so much for the engagement and participating in the conversation. Remember, we can all respectfully disagree on things. Nobody has to have the same opinion, okay? And I will see you guys tomorrow. Thank you, Rianne. Thank you, Stranger Clegan. Shout out to Dave. He was here earlier. And Sparkle, Rianne, you guys are amazing. Thank you to all the rest of you. You guys are absolutely amazing. And I will see y'all tomorrow. Leave a comment down below and let me know what you thought of this live stream and what your opinions are about Jeffrey Dahmer and why he did the things that he did. Do you think his parents are to blame? Let me know in the comments below. All right. I will see you guys tomorrow. Deuces. Love y'all. Bye.
I can feel the blood creeping up from the heathens. Got will, got fight, got pride, got reason. If they wanna go eat, then you know I'm gonna feed them. If you're coming for me, hope you're ready for a demon. I got eyes in the back of my head, I'm seeing. Take me for granted and you know I'm leaving. I'ma take what's mine with the webs I'm weaving. I could take this crowd from seeing to believing. Got a taste for blood and my tongue keeps bleeding from the words I spit, so sharp, so